Roll call.
Mr. Berger is next. Late. Ms. Capabianca.
Here.
Mr. Corey.
Here.
Mr. Predis.
Here.
Mr. Ugalito is excused. Ms. Fabiano is excused. Ms. Homer here. Mr. Kisco.
Here.
Ms. Richardson.
Here.
Ms. Toder is excused. Mayor Carbone. Mr. Barlow.
Here.
Ms. Bodere. Ms. Ferguson. Here. Ms. Klemazewski.
Here.
Ms. Lubansky.
Here.
Ms. Schulte.
Here. Thank you. I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the agenda, adding item, or actually replacing item 7B and moving everything down with a possible executive session regarding a non-union contract.
So moved.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
School community service, public participation. The board invites members of the community to speak on topics to be addressed in the agenda or other topics of interest. Speakers must state their name and address at the beginning of their comment. The board will not allow comments regarding specific staff members, parents, students, or personal grievances. Courtesy is expected in this limited public forum. The participating time will be limited to 3 minutes per person and 10 minutes overall to guarantee efficient operation of the meeting. Is there anyone sign? Thank you. Recognition, the best part of the board.
My favorite part. No offense. That's where we have the most for how I think we're going to see these pictures. That is the answer. Sure. We are honoring 2 students this evening from our Torrington High School. I love this award. This is the CABLE Award, and it's the award for leadership, but it's also the award for community service, both in school as well as outside of school. Hear about these students, you'll certainly understand why they are so deserving of these awards. So we're going to start with Mary Nelson. Come on, Mary. We get to say some really good things about. We will have everybody applaud at the very end. So Mary has maintained 4 well, strength in numbers, right? Okay. Mary has maintained 94.4 grade point average while at THS. She has an honors class and she's very dedicated to her studies, extremely hardworking. She's devoted, confident, positive, and her resume is outstanding. I love when I say resume. That's his name. She is involved both in and out of school. In school, she is heavily involved in the OTC program and within this program and throughout the school. She has 5 years. She is in the GROTC program. She's a recruiting officer and the lead commander. She has also joined many clubs such as the Strengths Club, Thrones Club, Club, Honor Society, National Honor Society. She's participated in the THS campus cleanup, and she's a student ambassador and grader rep for youth students, helping to make them feel welcome. And outside of school, Mary has selflessly served her community through volunteering for various events and activities. Breast cancer walks, events to help the homeless, volunteering with the elderly, volunteering to make a difference for our veterans, Susan Beyond Domestic Violence Agency, dog daycare with the ASPCA, and more. She's earned many awards, including Honorable Torrington Board of Education Certificates of Recognition, and most outstanding JRO. Agent Executive Scottish Bright and previous student award and signed jurisdiction USA through JROTC and the Tuskegee Airman Award, which I know is a fun as are all the rest. Our boards and more. Mary's leadership with the JROTC is extraordinary. She's one of their top ranking students and in this program throughout 2019. She's truly one of a kind. There's nothing that Mary can. Once she puts her mind to what's asked, she is truly a team player and is always looking. Mary wishes to pursue a degree in veterinary studies at Northwestern University. ask someone to take a picture. So our next honoree is Logan Wilson. Come on down, Logan. So, kudos to Logan. I mean, I think everybody knows now that you've been accepted to Harvard. We'll talk a little bit more about that as we go through. Logan is among the highest achieving students VHS has ever seen. He has consistently challenged himself by taking honors and post-level courses each year, and this year is taking on a student teaching role in studies in addition. As a three-season athlete with indoor and outdoor track and cross country, Logan has shared his extensive knowledge and experience with his fellow teammates while gaining valuable leadership skills along the way. We've been able to see these skills in action as Logan has served as class representative last year and is now the senior class president of student council. He is a model of maturity and respect in all interactions and this has approved multiple fundraising and school improvement. We also served on our task force for young professionals. Your articulate eloquent, I appreciate that. Acting as a student teacher to multiple ninth grade science classes this year has also allowed Logan to model positive classroom study skills to the younger students, as well as strengthen his ability to work with others and collaborate with coordinating teachers on projects and assignments. As a leader of the National Honor Society chapter, Logan is also committed to tutoring students both in school and outside of the school with this group, as well as the independent entrepreneurship. Okay. Serving as a section leader for the marching band, extensive scope of leadership even further, and has brought his experiences through multiple disciplines. He continues to prove his impressive ability to balance each of his various responsibilities and commitments with grades while also maintaining the highest level of work quality. And as I said at the very beginning, very impressively, Logan will be attending Harvard University to further his studies in the area of astrophysics. Okay, is it more impressive? And part in a collaborative environment that's connected to his interests. His outstanding academic accomplishments range across all subject areas, and we are confident that form at the highest level and can be and will be an valuable asset to the community. Thank you. Let's Kate loves to see the photo op. So come join us up here, and then hopefully you'll be in a paid flyer or yeah, exactly, newsletter, and so we share that with them as well. Thank you so much. You don't have to stay for the rest of it. It's all good. We wanted to take this time. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, information sharing session, superintendent's report.
Yeah, well, that's the topic of the week, the month, I don't know, the year is yonder, and it has been a wonderfully successful rollout. We are very, very excited. Prior till April 25th, I really appreciate TMS, some of my staff at central office is just coordinating some of that, middle school admins, really making sure that we have everything ready to roll. We had pouches, we had little totes and hampers and everything, cards ready, so that we were ready as the students came in. And I was there Monday and Tuesday, so it was really great to be able to see it. And there really was a flow. Students were wonderful coming in. They were a little sleepy on Monday, as expected, coming back. So we were teasing them a little bit as they were waiting in line for the pouches very respectfully. And students were learning how to use it, how to put the cell phones in the pouches. And some of our students didn't have cell phones at all. And we worked through that. And every single student got a pouch. So that was very helpful. Some students forgot their cell phones, or some parents didn't even have them bring cell phones at all. So that was their choice. Very interesting. We only had a handful of infractions, very, very small amount of damage over the last few days. I know I've been updating you in terms of the numbers. A couple of out and out refusals, but not very many. Ones you can count on one hand. So that's very good. So really just basically in that first offense for every single offense that did occur, which is phone was taken, student got them at the end of the day, parents were called, they understood the gravity of the situation and learned from the experience, and then we're moving on from there, which has been very, very helpful. I know at the high school, they started implementing the collection area of the cell phones, and that has worked out very well. In each of the classes, students are still able to use their cell phones in the hallways and at lunch. The change is study halls. They're not able to use their cell phones. They do have a collection area for the cell phones, and some cell phones have been confiscated. But in all of the groups, I think it went from 12 to 9 to 15 today. They're all new students, so students are learning. That's a good thing, that what the administration and teachers have said they would do, they did. And so it's new offenders. And then hopefully we just move on from there. So I know Mr. Scott is on and connected. If we want to just, Mr. Scott, you want to just give us a quickie update before we go into the OTL update?
Sure, absolutely. So as Sue mentioned, we did the initial handing out of pouches and labeling of pouches on Monday. So Tuesday and Wednesday were our first real implementation days. It's gone surprisingly smoothly. We haven't had any real interruptions. We are getting better every day at getting the kids into the building as quickly as possible. First day we did have a little bit of a backup, but that was because the kids were just getting the pouches and just labeling the pouches. But Tuesday and today, the kids have gotten into the building very quickly. So it's been going very smoothly so far. And we're hoping tomorrow we'll iron out those last few kinks in the system and we'll be fully operational by the end of the week.
I just want to say Principal Scott and to the assistant principals and the staff that has stepped up to really make this work. We greatly appreciate it. Hopefully we're all going to see great results from this, but we really appreciate all the work you guys have put into this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Comments?
Thank you, everybody, for your efforts.
And the teachers that I spoke with over those 2 days when I was there were very enthusiastic about it, really noticed a change in terms of just the environment and calming down. It's good. Students seem much more focused. Maybe they were just exhausted, but it did seem that it seemed to help. So we'll see. As you say, we'll start together. We've already started together, David. So keep track and we'll report back.
So we're anxious to see the decorated pouch,
Yeah.
whoever wins that contest.
Yes, we'll be announcing the art contest to the students at the end of this week. PTO really stepped up. Our TMS, Torrington Middle School PTO has really stepped up and offered some great prizes for the kids who participate. We got the markers in, so we're all set to roll out the art contest by the end of the week as well.
Thank you. Office of Teaching and Learning update.
Sure, I'm pretty excited actually about tonight's report because it's, this time of year when there's lots of happy things going on, and I have the honor and the privilege of reporting out on them. So as you know, 27 of our high school students during the break went to Paris and Amsterdam. And while I know there was some anxiety and reticence from the board and from us, honestly, full disclosure, it was a very successful trip. They had a wonderful time. And as promised, Erin Sullivan, who was the trip coordinator, sent us some really nice information. So I'd really like to share with you what the highlights were. So they traveled, the 27 high school students traveled with their teachers and chaperones last week to Paris and Amsterdam. Each and every student did the district proud and was complimented throughout the trip by the tour directors, the local guides, the bus drivers, just local folks, you know, from the area who were noticing them milling about. Comments included things like, oh my goodness, these students are so enthusiastic and curious. They're so thoughtful, what wonderful manners they have. They're so bright and eager, you must be so proud. Dutch culture fascinated our kids. They really absorbed the history of the city and the countryside. Many of them talked about doing study abroad in the Netherlands as a result of this experience. They found the city a great mix of the historic and the modern. In Amsterdam, they were able to get their first taste of a European city on a small scale. They enjoyed exploring the city and the canal on foot and by boat. They learned about Dutch farming traditions and the impact of the natural geographic features on the history and current life of the Dutch people. They were in awe by the Anne Frank house. Some of the kids commented how hard it was for them to quarantine for 2 months in 2020, but that was nothing compared to what Anne went through. The tour guide remarked repeatedly that the look of sincere gravity and thoughtfulness as they emerged spoke to the impact the visit had on them, as well as how serious and respectful they were to what the museum represented. In Paris, they learned how to pack as much experience into a trip as humanly possible. They were on the go. They saw the Louvre, the Picasso Museum, Montmartre, the Latin Quarter. They took a cruise on the Seine. They had lessons in French history, art history, literary history. They split off into groups to explore the Arc de Triomphe, the opera, became French artists and cooks. They learned to navigate the metro, complete transactions in a foreign language. They learned much about their own interests and goals for the future. Versailles was of particular interest as it both captivated and overwhelmed them. They discussed the implications of such a grand palace and its juxtaposition to the world of the lower classes. They absolutely loved the gardens. They took time to explore. One student, I think this is so cute, sought out a specific spot that his mom had visited when she was a student in the 90s, and he recreated a photo that she had actually done in that same spot. So the trip was a huge success and certainly one that our kids will never forget. And just as a reminder, another trip goes off in June at the end of the year. So because there was so much interest. So very exciting. I was really happy to hear this. Just another couple of just FYIs. Our state testing window is May 2nd through May 20th. So we'll be doing the ESPA and the NGSS during that time. We're also right now in the process of gathering nominations for the Teacher and Para of the Year. The deadline to submit nominations is next Friday, May 6th. And then Mrs. Creedon just sent this along. This is exciting. Approximately 25 seniors opted to test for proficiency in another language this spring. Spanish, Italian, French, Portuguese, Russian, Vietnamese, Albanian, and Bosnian. The testing for the seal of biliteracy is occurring this week. Students who score proficient will be awarded the Connecticut Seal of Biliteracy affixed on their diploma and indicated on their transcript. It recognizes the value of students' academic efforts and the benefits of being bilingual and biliterate, prepares students to be 21st century global citizens in a multicultural, multilingual world, and acknowledges that mastery of 2 or more languages is a valuable asset for both individuals and their communities. So very proud. Thank you, Joanne, for that information. This is so exciting for Torrington. Yeah.
Does anyone have any questions?
Do you have any updates on Washington by any chance? DC, on the DC trip?
As far,
If we just haven't heard anything about it. Normally we would get some kind of an update, so I'm just wondering,
like, is it going?
chaperone, yeah,
Yeah.
right? Is
Yes.
it, I guess, is the
Yes.
question?
Yeah, so
they
no,
are.
they're all set to go.
Yeah.
In fact, Brian might be able to give a little more detail on that, not to put you on the spot, but we've been in communication and we've been talking back and forth. Yes, they've got the
Okay.
chaperones lined up, they're ready to roll, things are going,
Great.
but I can get more of a comprehensive picture.
Do we
for
have
school.
the plan in place for the kids staying behind?
Yes, we're working on that. We were just talking about
Okay.
that today.
There was another trip planned, right, Mr. Scott? I think.
Yep, we're working on getting all of that stuff finalized. There's a schedule for the students who are staying behind, filled with activities for them to engage in that will be meaningful, so that it's not, a lost opportunity for them. And then we also, as Sue just mentioned, the chaperones have all been selected, and everything's ready to go. Mr. Sizer has done a really outstanding job getting everything organized and working with World Strides to make sure the trip will be a success.
Yeah, and I can give you a better idea once we totally finalize what's gonna happen here in Torrington.
Okay, like their schedule and stuff like that, and like, it's for me, it's just, I think, I love the trip, just like the Paris trip, it's just so much history there. Are there going to be kids that are going to be laying the wreath at the tomb of the unknown soldier, those types of things that we've done in the past? That's exciting.
We'll
to hear
get the
about.
whole itinerary
Yeah.
for you, yeah.
Do you know how many kids are there?
Well,
We can get
so
into it later.
I may have to, because I actually just emailed Brian with that same question.
Okay.
So, but we haven't had a chance to connect this afternoon.
And is there another trip planned for that week to New York City?
Not the New York City trip. We're working on something with the Warner, actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
But that's still kind of
In the works?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Question? Special education update.
Okay, I think you guys should have my report there, right? Everyone got a copy? Okay. Okay, so our first page here is just my normal numbers, pretty much status quo, which is a good thing. We have picked up a couple more kids in district, couple reasons for that. At this time of year, we sometimes get a little bit of a surge in referrals. I think sometimes what happens is parents might get a little bit nervous if their child's moving on to another school. So we get some referrals that jump up that we weren't counting on. So we picked up a few kids, but our numbers are right where they need to be. We continue to be compliant with what the state is looking for in terms of prevalence, as well as our outplacements. So excited to report that to you. The next page of our handout, I'm going to ask Gavin Craig to report out. We've talked a lot this year about SEL. And just to remind you, SEL is social and emotional learning. And this has really become a huge thing this year, because I don't think anybody really anticipated the impact that COVID would have on children socially. And it really has been a huge task to all the educators and in everywhere to try to get our kids back to where they needed to be. So Gavin really kind of took this under his sleeve this year, made this as part of his goal to really help us get our social emotional learning in line across the district. If you remember, we've talked about MTSS, and that's the triangle with supports that we put in place before we go to special ed. And there's the academic side, which we talk a lot about on the OTL side, but there's also the behavioral side. So Gavin's going to talk about what's going on right now. And this is full blown at the middle school. He's got things up and running there. And our plan is to get this going district-wide next year. So Gavin, I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right, thank you very much, Laura. So hi, everybody. Thank you for letting me talk for a few minutes on this. So this is kind of near and dear to my heart, as a psychologist before becoming an administrator. So this is something that has kind of been part of my wheelhouse for a while. One of the things that, as Laura was kind of alluding to, is we often think about interventions and early interventions in terms of literacy and numeracy. And what we often think as adults that we take advantage of is the fact that, well, we know how to act, right? But how did we learn that? We learned that through various sources. And what the pandemic has really kind of highlighted in a lot of ways is sometimes incidental learning, that things that we happen kind of just by virtue of working with your parents or working with friends or working with family or working with teachers. Some of that got missed along the way. And so what was already a concern prior to the pandemic in terms of social emotional responses from students was exacerbated by the fact that they were now isolated for several months. And so in absence of having that opportunity for that incidental learning, a lot of this turns to kind of us to make sure that those soft skills that they need in order to be a successful person at the end of their school career here at Torrington Public Schools is now needing to be directly taught in various ways. And we don't want to overteach, but we also want to make sure that we're teaching at various levels. And so this provides a framework for us to be able to address this dependent on where the student is at. So meeting the student where they're at in terms of their social emotional needs. So the goal here is to really kind of create consistency at each kind of grade level band. So we're working with K-3 teams, 4 to 5 teams, 6 to 8 teams, and then 9 to 12 teams. And what I did at the middle school in terms of working with the SEL team there is what we're trying to now replicate in these past couple of professional developments. Been working with the psychologists, social workers, counselors to identify, based on our own Torrington needs at each grade level band, what is it that are the most common kinds of buckets of need for students. So what we're trying to do is really kind of clearly define that based on observable behaviors that are either presented by the teacher, by the parent, or by our SEL staff, or by administration. And funneling through the lens of that bucket, then being able to quickly address strategies at either the tier 1 level that either the student can apply themselves, the teacher can apply them within the classroom, and then at the tier 2 level, starting to do things that are a little bit more frequent and more intensive, either by pushing into the classroom to help give some supports, pulling students out to actually teach them directly about that area that they are struggling with the most. And then at the tier 3 level, really getting very individualized and intensive in terms of the amount of their supports. By having very specific buckets, it keeps us as adults all on the same page. It allows for us to apply interventions with a greater amount of efficiency because we already do a lot. As an SEL staff, we have a lot of things that we do, but a lot of it is one-offs and a lot of it is kind of reactive. And so this allows us to kind of flip that and be a little bit more proactive in our approach to some of the needs that are presenting. We already are in motion in various stages at each of those band levels. And so this will just kind of help shore up any of those kind of missed spots along the way. The one thing that I want to make sure that this process will help us with is the problem identification. So that's what creates the buckets. So for an example, at the middle school level, we have a bucket for view of self. So for students that have concerns of self-concept, students that have concerns of self-esteem, that we start to then provide strategies for using the multi-tier system of supports and having the teachers come to us with a student of concern, that if they say this student feels like they can never speak out in class, right? We then provide strategies that the student can implement and that the teacher can implement. Come back to us in a few weeks, let's review. If that's not working, we go to the next level. Then we have a tier 2 instructional group that we can put a student into that actually teaches how to kind of identify strengths, how to identify needs, and how to overcome those kinds of areas. And then come back to us again. But each time that we're doing that, we're using our SST, the student success team, and under that early intervention style, the same way that we would address reading, the same way that we would address math, or now we're doing this with social emotional learning. And trying to clearly define via SMART goals or targeted goals that are measurable, attainable, and time-bound to define what success is. Because in terms of social emotional learning, one of the struggles that we have usually is how do we define success? Is it a feeling? No, we can quantify that. And so how do we do that? So there's different strategies that we're going to have in place here for this framework. So I'm going to continue to work with our teams across the district in this. The building administrators already know of this. They're already starting to, the SEL teams are already starting to meet at this point in time. So I'm kind of excited to share that we're already got the process in motion. and hopefully to roll out all of this in full-fledged application by the start of the year next year.
Dude, this is great. This is just really what I think we've been looking for and trying to get to the bottom of, to be proactive instead of reactive, which is never successful. You mentioned one of the buckets that you have is view of self. Are there other ones that you've identified?
Yes, absolutely. And we've identified each of them at each grade band.
Grade appropriate?
And so
Oh, okay.
we've adjusted it over time. So what we use is we use the Castle standards, the Castle framework, which is the
That's a
drawing
long
blank on the
acronym. You know?
but it's kind of the hallmark of our social emotional kind of standards. And so there's 5 key areas that have to be addressed in order for a student to kind of be successful post high school. And we took those, and then we took what we have in terms of data, what we have in terms of anecdotal information, and then we defined each of those buckets. So those professional development days were like working groups for all of these teams. And so once we developed all that, we then came out with the buckets for each of those bands. So for example, we have an emotional regulation band for the 6-8 level. We have a spectrum of needs. So maybe students that are a little bit more rigid and whatnot. And there's a few others.
That's great. Yeah, that's really exciting. Thank you. Does each building have their own SLT team?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes, so it's comprised
So
of
identify.
whoever kind of the components of either the psychologist, social worker, if there's counselors at the secondary level. And then included in that is always going to be the administrators, and then our VCBAs and our RVTs are also going to be a part of that process as well.
That's great.
So if I could just add a little bit more to that, Gavin has one more sheet, and I apologize, this didn't make it in. This was kind of decided today that I just wanted to review this quickly with you. So Gav, did you pass those out?
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
the one with the
Your
triangle.
behavioral interventions with a triangle, right? So I won't take long, guys. I just want to help you to understand right now where we are with elementary, particularly because I know there's been some concerns that have been aired, and I wanted to let you know some of the things that have been going on. So this aligns exactly with what Gavin is talking about. When we came back from the top is the triangle, okay? So basically what this is telling you is 80% of your kids will be in the green, and that 5% will be in that top part, which is your most extreme need with behaviors. I know sometimes it feels in the school like it's a lot more than 5%, but often it's not. Often it's a group of kids that are exhibiting the same difficult behaviors. And so we need to figure out how to teach them how to behave. And like Gavin was saying, we came back from COVID, and I don't know if you remember, but in the beginning of the year, I said it was a little bit of a surprise when we looked at our kindergartners, how some of them had such difficulty just functioning within the scope of being in a building. But you have to remember that some of them had been home for 2 years, had maybe never been in a preschool, had never been required to work in a group, wait their turn. And so now they're in kindergarten. And, you know, we want you to do all these things and learn at the same time. So we realized really quickly we had to do some things to help improve behaviors at the elementary, really the primary level. And so what we did is right away, we realized the big key here, this is for the whole district, is tighten up tier 1. So we really need to focus on rules, compliance first, training and modeling staff, and then school-wide PBIS. Just what are we doing for every kid in the school? And, you know, we realized that with our little people, maybe we had to put aside okay, does everybody know their ABCs on the first day of school? And we had to teach them, okay, when we walk into the classroom, we all walk to our table and we sit down. And we practice that still. You actually teach how to walk and sit down on the table. And so we talked about doing some of those things. The schools set up their SST teams, and as we were seeing disruptive behaviors, they were referred to the teams. In the beginning, there was a lot of, by the teachers, you know, what do? We have these 5-year-olds, you know, we have to test them. because maybe they need special ed. Well, there are a lot of other things, and this triangle speaks to some of these things that we need to try first. After that SST team gets that name, they may go in and they may do some observation, some data collection, offer some suggestions to teachers, and it might be specific to the child, but it also may just be a tier 1 intervention. You know, you can have a pom-pom jar in the front of your room on your desk, and every time you just see kids are doing what they're supposed to be doing, throw a pom-pom in there, and you know, little things like that that we can be doing for the whole class. For the most extreme behaviors, and that's that top part of that triangle, then what we put in place at the K3 has been the use of behavior strategy sheets. So if the mental health specialists see that there's a problem, they're putting these sheets in place, which really guide the classroom teacher and anybody working with the child on how to handle the behavior. The children have these sheets specifically because what's going to work for one child is not going to work for another. And the people that are working with that child really need to know what those strategies are. And really the people that aren't working with that child really should not be intervening with that child because they don't know what the strategy is. And so they'll put the strategy sheets in place, they'll use them, that will guide their instruction, then they'll collect the data and see how it's working. Like Gavin said, after a few weeks, is this working, is this not working? Then they come back. If they need to revise the sheet, they revise the sheet. And if we then need to go to a referral to special ed, at that point we might. But what I would really like to do, I know we didn't have time to do this tonight, but I would love to be able to share some of the data that shows how things have improved at one of our schools using this system. And it's really the behavioral growth as well as really an impact on the whole school climate. I think that people have really learned how to deal with a lot of these behavioral challenges and are getting more comfortable and confident dealing with it. And we really have some great data that we would like to show. And I'm hoping to bring in one of our BCBAs to have them go over that with you, because then you'll see, exactly what it is that we're using them for. So I'm sorry I ran a little long. I felt this was important information for you to have.
Are you utilizing transformative SEL? I know Castle has moved in a direction towards transformative SEL, which is something distinct from what SEL originally was. Are you familiar with that term?
So at this point, we're not subscribing to any one specific kind of approach. So in terms of the SEL component, one of the things that is actually offered by the state right now is called DESA. They've taken that and broken the 5 Castle standards apart into 8 in total. And so it really is talking about addressing these different standards. So what we tried to do is really focus on what are we seeing in terms of our students' needs in relation to what we know are the skills that they need at the end result. So in terms of subscribing to any one kind of theory of thought is not necessarily our focus, so much as making sure that where we see our students now and where we need them to get to and filling in the gaps in between.
Can I request, because you reference next steps, completion of SEL framework, complete with bucket strategies, SEL curriculum and scope and sequence. Can I request that information comes to the board before it be implemented? There are a lot of concerns about SEL and different forms of SEL, and some of it is very benign, some of it can become very political. And I mean, I could read on the Castle website right now, I could read off the 4 features of transformative SEL, which is what is being pushed forward in a lot of districts now, and some of it is very political. So I think that we have had other board members express concerns about some of these things before. I have some concerns as well, and I think it would be good if we could see what is being presented before it is implemented across the district. That would be my request.
To a certain degree, some of this is already in full implementation at the middle school level, but absolutely family can share whatever. Is there anything specific in terms of concerns that are present at this point?
Well, I mean, so on the CASA website that I have pulled up right now, it says core features of transformative SEL include things such as academic content that integrates issues of race, class, and culture, authentic partnering among students and adults with a deep focus on sharing power and decision-making between young people, educators, families, and communities. There's a lot of different things that touch on, a lot of it is very heavy on the identity-based, like identity politics type stuff, power dynamics, things like that. And some of those themes are themes that go beyond just helping kids be good people and be successful adults.
Right.
And so that, I think, for me would be the area of concern.
Sure.
I have heard people express concerns about things that are taking the form of counseling being implemented in the classroom by people that aren't counselors or without parental consent. So those would be some other things that I would want to check in on.
So absolutely. I can tell you from the outset that we are not addressing anything in terms of, say, culture, race, anything of that nature at this time. It's really about the student themselves, about how they relate to others in terms of just social skills, because social skills is one of the buckets that we talk about. And it's more about appropriate turn taking and how to function within a group. And then in terms of, say, the overarching kind of, I'm losing the train of thought because it's the second part of the concern there. But it's really, the focus is more on trying to just fill the gaps, because one of the things that you said in terms of counseling in the classroom, there are second step lessons that are already in place for K to 5. That's our tier 1 social emotional instruction at this point. And I call it instruction very intentionally. We have tier 2 social emotional instructional groups, and I call that social emotional instructional groups intentionally, not counseling. And that's in part because we're trying to teach students those replacement behaviors of what we want to see, as opposed to what they're displaying now that are considered maladaptive. So in that light, those tier 2 groups, yes, they're being run by either a counselor, a social worker, or a psychologist. No, they're not necessarily considered counseling because we are teaching during that class. And there is a specific scope and sequence for each of those buckets, for each of those tier 2 groups. And that's part of this framework in terms of development.
My only other question, thank you for that, is are we collecting behavioral data on students without parental consent? Do parents know, like I know there are some programs where the teacher checks in emotionally with students and they log this data. Is that something that we're doing?
So we have collections of behavioral data in general for all students. That's within the purview of school districts across the country. In terms of social emotional, so if you were to consider like a rating scales would be more of that social emotional base that would require consent. So the kind of data that we collect are the observable behaviors that we see within the classroom or within the school walls. And so that's recorded in programs such as Swiss and other elements like that. And we do use that as part of fueling our thinking as to like where the needs are, but we also use kind of that incidental or kind of anecdotal types of feedback that we get from teachers as well to try to combine those two to define which areas we need to really address more than others.
But that would be, like you said, observable
Correct.
things, not because I've heard of situations where teachers are sitting with students and checking in with them and like you said, a rating scale, things like that. And I think that is something different.
Yeah, anything that's standardized, that's either norm referenced or kind of comparison to populations outside of Torrington would be considered something that you'd have to get consent for from a parent. And we are not currently utilizing that in absence of consent. So the only times that we would really put that into place is in instances of a 504 or special education. It wouldn't be in this kind of a case. What we do is we do obtain consent for those tier 2 instructional groups, because we know that sometimes when we talk about social emotional learning, sometimes things can come up, right? And so in those instances, what we have done is we get both the verbal consent and then we get a follow-up of a written consent from the parent to make sure that they are aware of and they are okay with having their child be in the group. in part because it may uncover something that even though we're not necessarily addressing, say, a certain trauma of some sort, but it could pop up in the middle of the group. And so when we do have that happen, that's why we have the people that are teaching these groups be our SEL staff.
Thank you very much, Gavin. You know, it's
Thank
not
you.
easy to consider out here. We greatly appreciate your expertise. And thank you guys for the cups. We will enjoy
Yeah, thank
this.
you very much.
Thank you very much for coming.
I just want to commend Gavin because he really is doing yeoman's work in terms of getting us some data so that we can figure out our return on investment. He's been pulling together a lot of that referral data and then what are the consequences and what's happening at each school. And so we are looking forward to that data so that we can figure out where we're at with our staff. So thank you, Gavin.
That'll come in handy with our budget.
Yes, absolutely.
Other questions, Laura? Thank you also. HR update.
Hello, everyone. So you have the standard report that I've been giving you every month, which has our vacancies. We have the one middle school math vacancy that we are still aggressively working on. Candidates are difficult in that high shortage area. We do have a substitute in place for the ELL teacher that is vacant that will be able to, a qualified sub that can fill that role till the end of the year so that we can look to a new grad or somebody newly certified in that area. Classified vacancies, you can see we're still kind of very transient in that area. So we've had a little movement there. And I did add a column for the separations because the board had requested that I provide that clarity. So you now have the exact number of separations by category that occurred from the last board meeting to this board meeting, and I'll provide that every month.
Thank you.
Okay.
Do we
Sure.
have a qualified long-term sub for the middle school math teacher?
No, we do not. So we're using a building sub right now, and you know, they're working on trying to get that going, but it's been a struggle. So we don't have a dedicated person that's on board through the end of the year right now. We're working on it. So the middle school admin team, they've been interviewing candidates. The day they come in, we shoot them out, and they're working on it. And you know, we've had a couple of candidates that were recommended, and they declined the job because it's really difficult to fill jobs right now. There's a lot of people vying for the same candidates. So the middle school team has been, you know, even during the break, the assistant principals that were working, they were interviewing, recommending, we were working on it. So we're trying, but fingers crossed next month, that'll be better. So sub rates are going up, so that's good news. So you can see March, you know, was closer to that 70 for the teachers. Paras is still low, really, because Kelly Services' focus has been on teacher candidates for subs, and now they're going to start to try to fill that paraprofessional pool and build that back up from where they were. And then our absenteeism, you know, we're still kind of up and down. There have been some COVID spikes, things like that. So we're still kind of in that same, you know, range where it's up and down and up and down and ebbs and flows. With respect to initiatives, so I attended the career fair at City Hall for the Northwest Chamber of Commerce, which was really great. We spoke to about 25 candidates. I'd like to thank Jason Lafreniere and Stephanie Fletcher from the middle school. They attended with me so that they could speak to paraprofessional candidates really about what it was like to be in the classroom and what they'd be doing. So we have had a few of those candidates that we spoke to have applied for jobs. We've actually hired one already for the cafeteria. So that's really good. And then we have offered 5 educators early contracts for the 22-23 school year already for high shortage areas, particularly in Laura's area. So kudos to her team for jumping on candidates early so that we can get into those really high shortage areas, psychologists, pre-K, speech pathologists, those areas that really everybody's vying for those candidates. So we jumped on them early, offered them the jobs. They've already signed the contracts, so we're good. We know those are areas that are compliance driven, so we can't affect those in the budget. So anything that we know we need, we're moving on it. So We did attend the Yukon Job Fair. We spoke with more than a dozen potential candidates, and I actually met a Torrington grad, so that was really exciting. So we got to do that. And then we are scheduled to go to mock interviews at Quinnipiac University on May 16th and 17th, and 2 of the special ed supervisors are also going to attend with us to interview for those high shortage special ed positions. So electronic onboarding, we are complete. We've finished the implementation, so we are now fully electronic with our onboarding, and we're able to do that with candidates, so that's exciting. So we'll be rolling that out as we hire for the vacancies for 22-23. And the walking challenge started on Monday, and so I'm also pleased to tell you that that 192 has now gone up to 231. So we actually have 231 staff members that are registered for the walking challenge. Spring yoga was a success. So we finished, actually, I think this week's final one got bumped to next week. So they actually have 1 more week, but everybody's loving that. So that's great. And then stress management seminar series will be beginning this month. So that's our general updates. And then as per some of your other requests that the board asked for, so I've given you the substitute fill comparison rates between Kelly Services and Torrington substitutes. So I gave you the September to March numbers and also just the month of March so that you can kind of see what that looks like.
This is saying for March, you had 526 requests, substitute requests for the
Yeah.
month of March.
Well, you have to think about it. There's probably on the average of 75 per day, sometimes 100 per day. You know,
Of teachers that are out of school.
this is teachers in Paris. So
75 to
yeah.
100.
Yeah.
Every day.
Some of those are partial day, full
High
day.
or
That's about average.
is it?
And then you could have someone who's out 10 days, so it's 10,
Right.
10 days, right? So
And that
one
includes
person,
also
10
things like
days.
maternity leaves and leaves of
Extended
absences and you know,
absences and
anything
things.
like that is considered an absence because we still have to.
Right, right, okay.
And then on the right, you have the column that just kind of tells you the percent of those jobs that were filled by Torrington Public Schools staff. So we have some building subs that we've hired that are our building subs, plus we have the retiree subs. So all those people are Torrington employees, they're paid by Torrington. So that the percentage of the filled jobs that were filled by Torrington people, if that makes sense.
Yeah, oh, broken out September to March and then March.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
So for paras, it's much higher because Kelly Services doesn't have a lot of para subs, but we have some retiree para subs that are filling those jobs. So our fill rates for paras is low, but of the fill rates, it's majority our people because it's the retiree subs. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Staff turnover, I gave you just the breakdown of the staff turnover from September to March, just so you could clearly see the numbers. So that's the total number of separations by category with our total number of staff and then the turnover percent. And I gave you classified and certified. And so for the certified with the total separations, I did just want to clarify over to the side, you can see of those 30, some of those are for coming in June. So they've already put in their retirements for June. They're still working for us right now.
Yep.
11 of those 30 were, I'm resigning in January and I'm leaving in February.
Yeah.
Like that kind of thing. Okay.
I think that's helpful because I think part of what was happening was things were showing up on the consent
Right.
agenda, but they weren't actually.
Right.
Then in the
Didn't
other
have-
We
numbers,
have some
because they
people
had
that put
actually
their
left
their retirement in December. They're like, I'm going, I'm out, but I'm going to June.
there.
And other people wait until May to put their June retirement in.
Right.
So, you know, we give them to the board as soon as we get them, but it might not be effective at the same time.
Immediately, yeah.
I have a question. Go ahead, Sue, and then Jeff.
For the numbers that we have September to March, in August, this past August, I don't remember what happened last year. When will we incorporate, or how do you incorporate those numbers that we have from August into the overall picture? Because we have, so in June, we'll get a report, we'll be off in July, we'll get that August report, and then in August, we'll get September's, but then we don't see it again for
Right,
the rest of the year.
So if you look at the next page, take a look at that. Maybe that'll help clarify that for you.
Okay.
Because
All right, so you
I tried
got-
to color code it for you.
I did.
So that you could see which numbers go into which year's retention and
Okay.
turnover numbers.
So
So-
should this, does this really reflect August through March, actually, like the school year? Because you do have
The
August,
30, right, yes, so
is
the
from
30,
August through March, right?
yeah, it does include the September, right? So the August one, because those people never actually set foot in a classroom this school year, they count to last year's retention, because they never once came to the school this year. They put their resignation in August, but their last day of work was actually June. So they
Right, but
count
where
for
do
the
where
previous
do those numbers go? Where, like,
So that would be part of the previous school year's retention and turnover numbers. That's why we don't report a lot of information to the state until like October 1st for the
okay,
previous school year. Because we have to wait until
all
we
right,
get
so
all the
you'll put the
information.
August, any August numbers you get, you'll report for,
It'll be part of
the
the
prior
previous year's
Okay.
retention.
all right.
But if they come
So
to
I'm
work,
putting it ahead when it should be really going
Right,
down,
exactly.
behind.
yeah,
Okay.
so, but if they come to work, even for a day,
Yeah,
then I would put them as part of this school year's
okay,
retention.
okay, all right, that's helpful.
Okay.
Yeah, got it.
But I tried to color code it so you could see
Yeah, thank you.
up here, which consent agendas went into
Yes.
which numbers.
Yeah,
So,
okay, that makes.
and then I
clears up a
also
lot.
thought it would be helpful to give you the number of retiree incentives taken in those turnover numbers, because
Mhm.
obviously when we offer a retirement incentive, our separations are gonna go up.
Right.
Because that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to encourage people to maybe retire so that we can, bring in a newer person with a
Lower
salary
salary.
differential that can help us out with budget.
Yeah.
So,
So then, just to clarify then, so in August, you would provide us with those people we're retroactively putting back to June.
Yeah.
We'll get those in.
yeah, because they'll still be on the August consent agenda, so then I'll just, so I don't know.
You'll tack
I-
on to
you-
the 21, 22.
I don't think you need this detailed consent agenda every month anymore, but I can give you this every month if you'd like.
Yeah, we don't need the detail anymore, because we have it anyway.
Yeah,
but-
that's what I'm saying. I just, and you
Yeah.
have it historically to go back to, but I wanted to, I
Start
literally
from
went back to
scratch.
every consent agenda to make
Yeah.
sure I had the right numbers, because I really wanted to make sure it was accurate for
Yeah.
you.
And it is,
So,
the numbers I have, from what you sent out are the same, because I'm tracking it too, and that's where I was getting confused, was with the August
Sure.
numbers, so that's very helpful.
Okay.
Thank you.
Have we been able to implement an exit interview with the non-certified departures?
I've only had one person accept and do it. But I have sent it to everyone that has submitted a resignation. Again, I don't necessarily offer to everyone, to Fiona's point, if it was a mutual separation of some nature. So, but for the people that I offered it to, only one has accepted.
Are people able to fill that out after they're no longer working with us? Or is it something that they have to fill out while they're still like in our system? Like,
It's open to them, but I send it to their Torrington email, because we don't necessarily have everybody's personal emails, so, I mean, if they wanted to go into it afterwards, they could access it, but I don't know how they'd access it if they didn't have a Torrington email anymore.
I wonder if that's a hindrance, because if you still have a Torrington email, you're still working in the building. Right, because once people depart, that email gets shut down, they don't have access to it anymore.
Yeah, I genuinely don't think they're not filling it out because they're still here. I think some people just either don't want to do it, or it's a technology thing. And I do offer them to meet in person if they'd rather meet in person. And some people choose to do it or choose to just say, no, I don't want to participate.
They can always print it or forward it to their own personal email and complete it when they leave. We can't.
Well, that's
use
what I
their
was wondering, if
personal
that was allowed, or if it was something where it's just only.
No, it's
for
set up to
student
be
or
open.
email.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did set it up to be open so that they could, any email could access it.
Maybe we should, sorry.
No, I was just saying, are people able to, do they have the option of filling it out anonymously?
No, because that wouldn't really helpful to us. We need to know who it is and where they are.
Not
so that we can
necessarily.
so that we can affect the outcome.
You may not
So.
necessarily need to know who they are, maybe what building they're in.
We
but
would
I
know
don't-
anyway because we have such a small number of resignations. So even if we did anonymous, they would know. we would know, just because we have such a small number of resignations, and I think they would know that, so.
It might maybe be
I'd be
worth
very
trying.
comfortable with anonymous. I
Yeah.
feel like if you really think there's a problem, then you're no longer in the district.
I don't know of any
Report it,
school
you
district
know
that
what I
does
mean?
anonymous exit interviews, I'm just gonna say that.
Why you would do it.
I could see why you wouldn't submit an exit interview.
But you also
If you're
couldn't
looking for another
disprove
job.
what they were,
use this as a
but you couldn't
reference.
disprove what they were saying either if it was anonymous, right? It works both ways.
Well,
How do you
and-
know that there's any validity to what they're saying? If no one can even look at the building and what's actually going on.
Right, and
That's true.
that's the point that I was trying to make previously too, is that when we do an exit interview in HR, we typically commit to them that we're gonna keep the information anonymous. It's really for us, for our continuous improvement. You know, and that was kind of my concern about talking about the exit interviews openly at the board meetings, is that kind of then negates that level of anonymity that we're looking to promise them.
But on the other hand, if we're not aware of some of the issues that are being raised, then
Yeah,
there's not a lot of ways to help it.
absolutely,
You know,
and that
so
would
it's
be,
kind of like a
and that would,
double-edged sword.
again, and I agree with you 100%. But that would be for us to then say with superintendent, you know, okay, these are the things that we could use board support for, and then, you know, rely on us to come to you when there's something that you really can help us with, like pay increases or more staff or something like that, then we would say, based on our exit interviews, you know, we see a pattern now that we think this is something we really could use board support for. So,
In the past, we've heard about non-renewal letters about this time of the year. Is that something we still do? And if so, have we done it?
so we didn't do it last year because of COVID, and we're not required to do it if we're not non-renewing somebody. So we did talk about this and we didn't do it this year. We didn't have anybody that was being non-renewed for performance. So there was nobody to bring forward to the board.
Do we have non-renewals for other reasons?
So it would only be for budgetary reasons. And since we haven't cut any positions that would require somebody to be non-renewed, we had none of those notices to present to you all. It's kind of a retention issue. When you send those letters out to those non-tenured teachers, they tend to get very scared, and we tend to lose people very, very, very quickly when they see those letters, because most districts don't do that anymore. So when they get that letter, they go into panic mode, they start looking for another job, and then we tend to lose people.
Those
So-
are always a bad idea.
Right. So I genuinely believe that those letters should be given to people that we genuinely believe might be laid off for budget, or, you know, that are being non-renewed for performance.
Oh, I have one. Where do we sign up for that stress management?
Let's let that go. I definitely send you all the information.
Are we allowed to take that?
It's an immunity partner, so I think so, yeah. So, yes, so no. So,
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kim. This is a lot of great information. Thank you for putting all that
Oh,
together for us.
Oh, and we filled the last safety and security para position. I forgot to tell you.
Oh, that's
He
great.
came in today for orientation. So
Excellent.
that's
The
actually
middle
awesome.
school?
Yes,
Middle school, awesome.
so came in today, all done, like, so I wanted to share that too, that's great. So,
Thank you. Entertain a motion to go to executive session regarding a non-union contract, inviting in Superintendent Levon.
Second.
All those in favor?
Would you, Sue?